Hey everyone, welcome to Wilson Builds. If you're new here, I'm Zach. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're on another episode of my 1929 Ford Roadster. If you're not familiar with this car, we've been building it for about the last 6 months here on YouTube. And if you like today's video, there's a whole, probably 2 dozen other videos on my channel waiting for you to watch specifically about this car. So if you do end up liking the video, or you just want to check out what else we're doing on the channel, please do so. And while you're there, don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe button if you like what you see. Anyways, guys, today I'd like to focus on a bunch of little jobs, I guess. Little important jobs. I think if I say little, it doesn't make them seem important, but they're all important at this point because we are so close to finishing this car. So I'd like to come into the cab, tackle the steering column, tackle the gauges, tackle maybe a little bit of wiring and stuff like that, specifically on the gauges, get our coil mount on the firewall, our steering looked at, and see where else we can get today. But the really important stuff is steering and I guess gauges. I guess everything I just mentioned is pretty important. But anyways, guys, that's what I would like to do today. So hopefully we can get that done. So let's get into the video. All right, guys, while I have your attention, first things first, we just picked up our coil mount from LG Speed & Custom. This is a Roadster supply part, and I just want to take a second to say how impressed I am with this product. The quality, the finish, the construction, everything down to a T. Yeah, pretty stoked on that. Just wanted to mention that before we start pulling out the steering column. All right, everyone, this is my 1940 Ford Deluxe wheel. This came out of my really good friend Marty's 1932 Ford. It is an aftermarket wheel. It's obviously a much smaller. I don't think the original one would actually fit in here. It might if I wasn't in here, but that's a big wheel. So this is, I think, a 14-inch wheel. I could be wrong, maybe 13, but it's been in storage. It was at storage at Marty's place for, I don't know, a year, and then probably about 2 years here, and it has dents, dings, bruises, scrapes, the whole 9 yards of imperfections, but everything else is working really good. So realistically, we just have to make it look good for it to be in this car. So I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna paint, I think, the wheel because it has, again, dings and scrapes and chips. But more importantly, I like to attack and get the steering column looking really good because you can see it coming out of the firewall and see it pretty profoundly in the car as well. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm measuring from here to our flange there, and we're at 4 3/4. So when we put it back on, obviously you can see at one point it was here, probably in Marty's car, and then I had to move it up here. So that being said, we have to, figure it out before we paint it up, so we're not scratching it kind of needlessly. So yeah, 4 3/4. I'm just gonna write that on our board here. So I just did 4.75 collar to taper. So collar, taper. All right, so we can start taking this guy apart. I'm gonna take the horn button off first so we can get access to the bolt. And I believe you just turn it until it comes out. I could be wrong. Oh, no, there it goes. So we got a spring, we got our wire for our horn, and our main bolt in here. So before we go any further, I thought I'd let you guys know that I'm not gonna be using turning signals. I'm not gonna be using the horn off the horn here. So I'm realistically going very, very simple with this. I do wanna put a horn in it, of course, but turning signals, this, I don't care about. We can get rid of that. We can get rid of our hazards as well and just have the steering column looking really good and just shaved, I guess. So many of you are probably like, wow, why? I don't have to run turning signals as per the law goes because they came out, I think, in the 50s or something like that. Could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I just want it to look really simple. I don't like these levers. And I think that's enough explanation. So it will delete these wires here. We might even be able to fill that hole, and it'll just make it look real nice. So let's get this center bolt off and pull the wheel off. Okay, so this is the little plastic thing for the horn. The little chute goes down here and makes contact with this and makes a horn sound. But we have our turning signal, as you can see, moving in there. So I'm gonna see if we can dissect this a little bit, make it simplified, but if not, we can just take this off and nobody's ever gonna know that's in there. Okay, so just like that, we have a simplified steering column. No wires, no plastic, no nothing. And we can actually fill all the holes where the wires came out, where the hazards were, and where the turning signal was, and make it look even better. And then we can take our abrasive disc, strip it all down, and actually, well then, after we strip it all down, then we'll do the welding, and then we'll prime it, paint it, and let it dry. And while it's drying, we could probably install our coil holder and get the brake reservoir hatch and our dash prepped for paint as well. So let's get this guy stripped and then, yeah, figure out what's next. Okay, we have it all filled now. That little notch there was there before. The spot we welded is right here. You can see it just a little bit, but I mean, you'll see that, which was already there before you see our weld. And then this guy will be on the bottom. We can always utilize this as well, this hole down to this hole if we had to. But I think it's ready for primer. I'm just gonna give it a quick go over with some Scotch-Brite and then wax and grease remover, and then we'll spray our primer. All right, we're getting our paint ready. This is a Hot Rod Black Satin by Spraymax. It's a 2K. So we're gonna shake this up, spray our hatch, spray our steering column, and then tomorrow we're gonna come, where did the dash go? The dash is right there. We'll spray that tomorrow. All right, our steering column is all dry now. Well, dry to the touch. I'm not quite gonna rush to put it in so far, but it has a really nice coat, no runs, no imperfections, so that's awesome. I'm a little hesitant. This is like the ball joint that goes into the floor mount, and I'm a little hesitant putting this on because we have to slide it up. So I might stretch it out a little bit. It does have a slit down the middle, so hopefully we can get that on without scratching the bottom, because we do see the bottom coming out the firewall. That being said, we also painted the trap door for our brake reservoir, and that's done and back in. So we can now get a start on our steering wheel. All right, so I've already masked off the steering wheel, and I've showed you guys before the dents and bruises. Actually, I shouldn't say dents, there's no dents. Dings and bruises and scrapes. I mean, you can say anything you want, but realistically there's imperfections. That being said, I have masked the middle pieces here because I'd like a little bit of accent in there, whether that be the center section. That might look weird, so this is the best thing because they're actually cut off by metal pieces of trim, so it's going to look really cool. I should have showed you before I put the tape on, but I'm too lazy to take the tape off now. We might also leave the horn button kind of that shiny color, but we'll have to see. But anyways, let's prep this guy and then we'll give it a paint job. Okay, so we got it all sanded and smooth, and it's ready for paint. So I'm gonna put it up on the pedestal and give it its first coat of 2K satin black. So, as our steering wheel is sitting in a tack coat, I'm gonna start prepping our dash. The back is primer. I'm not too picky about that. However, when we were test fitting our gauges, we got a little chip in there, and that's not cool for me. And this satin black is a little different than what we're spraying on everything else, so might as well fix it while we have the chance. So. All right, so while we literally wait for paint to dry, I'd like to get our coil mount mounted onto the firewall. Now there's some variables that we have to think about. We have to think about our plug cap going on top. We have to think about where our floor is in here and where it comes up to so we can drill either above it or below it. And we have to also think of how close we want our coil holder to our indentation. So first things first, what I did is I measured our throttle cable clearance to the floor as the floor comes up at a 45 to meet the inside of the firewall, and we have 2 inches of play. So I guess the next step is measuring our studs on the coil holder. And let's go eye to eye here. We are looking at, give or take, 3.5. So that being said, now we can basically know if we go exactly to the throttle cable on our upper stud right here, we'll have enough room because we're definitely clearing the floor. All right guys, it's the next day. Yes, I'm wearing the exact same outfit. I have duplicates. That being said, we're gonna put the steering column back in today. So at the beginning of the video, or halfway through, I don't know when it was, we measured how far our steering column, I guess, fastener was compared to this taper here. So that was 4 3/4. So all we have to do is run down here, measure 4 3/4, and put a mark at 4 3/4. So we know where to put the steering column. I probably said 4 3/4, a little too much there. But anyways, let's get that done. We'll put this in and I guess just try not to scratch it at this point. All right guys, while we wait for a couple things to get a little bit more dry, like our steering wheel and our dash, I'm gonna start working on just finish up a couple wires and like hose lines in the engine bay here. And we're gonna start with our water temp gauge sensor line. So if you guys are like me, this is one of the most frustrating pieces that goes on the motor because it's really hard to hide, especially on an open bay Roadster. So there's a couple things that you can do. I mean, on my 55, I actually have a Dakota Digital, so it is just a plug and it looks actually relatively nice. That being said, we're not doing that on this. We are mechanical gauges, so we have to figure out what we need to do. So a lot of the time, you could probably make it look nice if you were to fasten it kind of anywhere, but it's hard to do. You can't fasten it just anywhere. You have to have a bolt hole or something else to fasten it to. And I thought today, like I was routing it and kind of looking in different areas where you could. I tried it on the other side of the motor, but to hide it the best, it's gonna go underneath the throttle. And I got these Performance World P-clamps from G.A.S Classics. And I think we're gonna try and modify some of these to just bolt into some of the locations on the intake that we're not using. For example, there's two from the back for your coil, and I'm unsure what the two kind of right in the middle there are for, but we're not using any of those. So if we can drill one of these holes bigger, and I'll show you in a sec what I mean, we could just put a different bolt in there and clamp them down, and I think it'll be okay. So that's what we're gonna try to do. So we have these holes down here, and they're 3/8 coarse, and then the other ones are just back here, and they're a little bit smaller. So if we can get at least one of our P-clamps mounted in one of these holes, if not two, and then one back there, I'll be pretty happy because it will look, you know, relatively clean and organized. So now we take one of our P-clamps, as you can see there, and all we have to do is drill this hole to the size of this bolt. So let's go get a drill bit and see if we can do it. All right, so we were able to get the bigger hole drilled, and it still has, you know, a good amount of space on each side. And then I had these stainless Allen key bolts that we can use, and it seems to fit pretty good. It rides up just a smidge on there, but I'm not gonna be too worried about that. So let's try to get one of these in and see how it holds our cable. And if it holds it good, we'll drill some more. Okay, you can see our grommet underneath there. We could always put more stuff through there if we have to, which is awesome. And then all the mounts we made, 1, 2, and 3, hold the line really nicely and make it look like it has a bit of a purpose instead of just kind of dangling. Don't mind that. I'm gonna have to put a nipple on the end of that, but really happy with the outcome of that. All right, now that our dash is all painted, we can permanently put our gauges in. So I guess we can just start with the speedometer here. All right guys, so now that we have our steering wheel and steering column in semi-permanently, we can go ahead and now mount our tachometer, which goes on the steering column if you've seen previous videos. This is a moon eyes tachometer. I don't know, I kind of like them. They look vintage. Realistically, I should have just put the tachometer in the dash with the rest of our gauges, but we didn't. So we're using this guy, and that's totally fine. That was the plan from day one. Anyways, this is a steering column mounted tachometer, so we're gonna have to mount it with a hose clamp. So hopefully we can mount it on the first try so we don't get any scratches on the steering column. Anyways, let's get this on. All right guys, now that we have our steering wheel, our steering column, and all the little jobs we wanted to get done, we can move on to the big job I wanted to get done today, and that is getting our steering hooked up. So I just went down to G.A.S Classics, and they were able to order me both the steering fittings I needed. So we have a 1 inch to 3 1/4 and 3 1/4 to the spline that our Vega box is in. I don't remember off the top of my head. Anyways guys, and then we'll just take some steering rod and get it all connected. So hopefully this is very painless. Usually when I say that, it's not. But seems pretty straightforward. So let's get this hooked up and then we'll wrap up the video. So I know you guys can't see this too well, but we're putting on the link to the steering column now. And I kind of remember it being a bit of a pain, so I might just have to tap it on with a hammer. All right, now we can take our second one and go down onto our spline. And hopefully it's the right. Yep, it is. Okay. All right, so we got our link down here pointing up and our link off our steering column pointing down. So now we got to measure in between. All right, let's see how accurate of a measurement we can get here. Here it's saying 10 inches. So that's easy. How long do we have here? First off, we have 12 inches. So cut off 2 and put it in. Okay, so there we have it, 10 inches. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull the bottom one off because it seems to be a little bit easier because we're only working with 1 bolt instead of 2 fastener bolts, or 1 fastener bolt and 1 kind of through bolt, which goes through our steering column. So I think we might have a through here too, which we might be able to utilize as well. So if we do utilize the through bolt, it actually just goes through. So we'll have to drill a hole in here. So I like just kind of test fitting this into a point where it's snug in there. We might have to take a little bit more burr off here, but try this other way. Like so, until it's flat on the surface in here. So that means you know it's not going to bind up when it goes to turn in any which direction. So that's kind of the area we want to drill. So now we can make our mark through there, and they will allow us to drill, and then we can put our fastener through the whole thing, making a really strong connection. All right, so we have our steering rod in there now. The only problem we run into is you can see through that hole, it's okay, but it doesn't go to the top of here like we did. So we're gonna have to just adjust that just a smidge so it also pulls out of the bottom and kind of fits the gap, and then make sure that they're both even. If that didn't make any sense, this one was sitting flush like I showed you guys with the link. This one wasn't, so we're gonna have to counter move them to make them even on both sides. So I've turned our wheel so we can have that hole at the top on both ends. So now we can mark it for where we're gonna drill. I don't know if my automatic punch will actually be able to get in there, but let's see. Okay. And okay. I think that's good enough. Kind of mark, make sure this is the side we know we're doing. All right, we can see the mark, and this one we can also see, so good. We can take that off now. It'll come off, it's not loose yet. Oop. All right, let's go drill these holes to, I guess, that size, or a little bit bigger, of course, and then we'll go ahead and put them back in. All right, got our 2 holes. Now we can put it back on. I don't think, maybe I should paint this. No, because then it would be such a tight fit. We'll just leave it like this. If it starts rusting, it's easy enough to pull off and we can fix it. All right, so where long bolts, they're in my pocket. I figured I should show this. So as you can see, our steering shaft moves just a little bit. That's because I drilled the hole a little bit bigger than this. So if we had to, we could make a little small adjustment. And I'm glad I did, because we need a little bit more down here. And as you can see, when you have one joint moving and two joint moving, you can actually have quite a bit of adjustment, but you know it's not going to come off because it's through the steering rod. All right guys, there you have it. We got a bunch of little jobs completed, and I think they all deserve pretty big check marks on our to-do list, because although they were small, they were important jobs. So we have kind of our dash in permanently, which is great with all the gauges. Now obviously we have to wire the voltage gauge and the fuel gauge as well as the speedometer, but as others go, the water temp and the oil pressure are hooked up to the motor now. So really happy that's done. Our steering column, steering wheel, tachometer are all installed, painted, ready to go. And with that comes our steering, which is now operational and essentially good to go. All we have to do is do an alignment and fix all our steering links and stuff like that, and make sure they're tight, make sure the cotter pins are in, and so on and so forth. But other than that, super happy with where we got to today. Hopefully you guys are as well. If you are, please drop a comment below. And even if it's just where you're watching from and how your day is going, I love to see it, and it really helps the channel. So thank you in advance for that. And while you're down there, don't be afraid to hit that like, subscribe, and notifications, because that also helps the channel greatly. And if you like what you saw, even if you didn't, tell me in the comments why you didn't. Anyways, guys, really happy, super stoked. Another job off the list, or jobs, I should say. So yeah, on to the next video, and we'll see you there.